all these like spiritual gifts, like empathy was kind of huge, or like being an empath and not really fully understanding like what that was. But realizing like I'm very sensitive to a lot of things, and I mean like other people's energy too. And just in certain areas that I go, I can feel different energies within rooms or within buildings, stuff like that. And um, pretty much like I remember reading this thing where it was like, you might not be an empath. You might have just gone through like a lot of trauma and like, all these different things. And that, like, I really chewed on that for a good chunk. And, in ways, yeah. Um, I feel like I kind of learned how to develop how to read like certain situations pretty well. Um, but yeah, like, I guess at the time, it's really hard for me to, I guess, explain this because there was a lot of healing that happened before that, like things that kind of helped me like understand, like our parents did the absolute best they could given with the resources and the things that they knew then.
Absolutely.
And I guess I will jump back really quick. um, I It was like right after high school. 2016, I had all these questions, and me and my older brother, like we'd be talking, and he'd be very interested that like I could pick up what he's putting down, and like just genuinely wanting to like seek truth at the time. And like it was just little things that would happen like at school that I'd be like, oh, that's weird, like everyone thinks this certain way, like what is that all about? Or you know little things like that. And anyways, my older brother, he told me about like, oh, and back then, I started listening to him. But honestly, a lot of healing came in 2018. He had introduced me to like a guy named Jesse Lee Peterson, and I think I've shared with you guys about him before. And one of the first things I ever heard him say, I think at the time, like I felt this very heavy weight. Um, and I've gone through periods of times where like I'd feel this very heavy weight, and naturally within myself, it would be like, hey, you go like, say sorry to these folks. When I was a kid, I was kind of like a little bully. I was a bully. I was, completely different. Uh,
Wow, I can't even
acting,
imagine that.
right? It was insane. Like I was acting out. It's kind of nuts. And I never understood like why. Um, and I realized after forgiving, like I feel like way better. I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. But it's like this buildup of this heaviness would come up again. And just at the right time, I was kind of sharing some of the stuff with my brother, and he shared with me Jesse Peterson. One of the first messages that I heard him ever say, because I'm hearing all of these different perspectives across like the world, whether it's men and women, and it like just blew my mind. I was like, whoa, like I'm not the only one. I didn't have like a lot of people I felt comfortable with sharing, or again, I wasn't in a community where I got to hear these things often. And I just remember like him mentioning like to forgive both of your parents, and that like you can kind of attract like what you hate. And like that was huge for me. And I just never really realized it. Like, my I think around that time, my mom actually admitted that she was like a narcissist, or she had these like heavy narcissistic, um,
Tendencies.
yeah. And I didn't know what that was. Like, I really didn't read too much into any of that stuff. But as I was a kid, I'd be like, man, like I would see favoritism. I'd see all these different things. I had my brothers and everything. And what I noticed is that, yeah, like all my brothers were kind of like mama's boys. And then I was like daddy's girl at the same time. And then I heard it was normal. And then, you know, but I'm like, yeah, but I want to be like really close to my mom, all this stuff. And, um, there's just a lot of things that I just didn't understand. And we just always butted heads, and it just didn't make sense. And like, I kind of grew this thing within me as like a young kid that like I told a story that my mom didn't love me, like as a very young kid. And which played a lot of factors in a lot of things. And then I just remember I had like some counseling. I did talk to like JLP once or twice, and it was just really interesting because he was like, "Yeah, you're gonna like forgive your dad," and I was like, "Forgive my dad about what?" And then he's like, like this is when I started digging a lot more, and like there were some unfortunate things that kind of happened, you know, like whether it's like emotional or like physical abuse, like as a kid, with my mom. But my dad was always working, and so like I just realized like my dad didn't really understand at the time, and like even when I did have that conversation with him, he was like, "I had no idea," type of thing. But there was like things within me that would kind of boil up, especially as a teenager. I was like wanted nothing to do with anyone, and I was kind of like couch surfing. I was like, I didn't realize this was like me escaping. But anyways, yeah, I went to go forgive like my parents at the time, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. You know, it didn't go the way that I thought it would. Like, and I did it when they were both in the living room, and it was just a really interesting, intense time. But I just remember I was like, I do not want this to like hold on to me for the rest of my life. I didn't know what else to do. Like, I want this off of me. And anyways, after that, like I think the concept of like, do you truly forgive in your heart? Like the spirit knows.
Mhm.
Like you can say it with your words, but if you don't truly like forgive, it's not gonna leave. Like God's not gonna like take it away from everything. And it like forgiveness really is a gift. And after a while I realized like, oh, maybe I maybe I don't like I didn't actually forgive. And interestingly enough, I was working at a Native corporation at the time. My mom was really well known in the community, and my boss called her by her name and was like, "Hey, we want your mom to work for us. Like, are you okay with that?" And again, it was like God was kind of telling me like, "Yeah." And I didn't really understand what was going on, and I was like, "I'm gonna be working with my mom. Well, I guess we'll see how this goes." Um, and you know, a lot of things kind of came of it, but I like God orchestrated it all, and just everything that we kind of touched up on, all the things that, we were brought really close together. I feel like we were actually able to like work through all of that stuff. A lot of funny things happened throughout the time that we both worked together. Uh, but like truly, I think it was like after that we finally got to this point where like we saw each other for where we were at. That happened. Um, and then, you know, kind of like my dad was like kind of next. It was like not realizing, like, not really understanding what a family unit is supposed to look like. Just kind of growing up knowing what I know. And I didn't realize I resented him, for like the protection and whatnot. But he honestly was doing everything he could. Same with my mom. And at the time, like I wouldn't be able to talk to them or about them or be around them without some sort of anger. Like I had this insane anger within me, and I started to see it fleeting, and it felt like just the sweetest release where it's like, wow,